Tara, Justin, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you.
Good to be here.
Thanks, Brian. I talk so much. I was waiting for Tara to say something, and then she was waiting for me, and we were like,
I'm used to him going first. I'm like, oh, okay.
That's why I try to defer. My goal is always to defer, and then I end up taking over.
Well, I have it written down just from like alphabetical
anyway,
order, Justin, Tara. I'm like, I'm going to flip it around just as a whatever randomness. Well, hey, it's good to have y'all. I mean, obviously, the Just Get Started podcast, it's all about really helping folks realize they can live a more fulfilling life. Like they can do things different than maybe they once thought. And your story is really intriguing me as I started to kind of pare down into some of the background that I could find online. So I'm really interested to go into some of these pockets of like your Just Get Started story and really how you've helped develop that that new life for yourself. I thought we'd start. I mean, there's plenty of places I wanted to start. I mean, obviously there's only one clear way to start, and it's around dropping out of college, because it seems like if that moment doesn't happen, that time of your life doesn't happen. If you decide to go left versus right, who knows where you're at? So unless you think there's another appropriate spot, it seemed like that was a big catalyst moment to get you on the right path that you are today. So can you start there, kind of give some context to everyone of like, why did you drop out of college? What was going on in your life at that point that made that the best choice in the moment?
Yeah, for sure. So from a young age, I knew I wanted to have a business. I didn't know how to start a business. I didn't really know many people that were entrepreneurial. My parents were in a few different MLMs, multi-level marketing things. And I think that kind of got in my head a little bit. They were never like really successful at it though. But I ended up going to like a couple of conferences with them in Vegas, and in high school I read, Rich Dad Poor Dad because someone suggested it to them. And so I don't know where it came from, but in my mind, I always had this thing of wanting to start a business, wanting to be an entrepreneur. I was always trying to make money. You hear the natural entrepreneurs. If I say natural, because I believe anyone can be an entrepreneur, but there was definitely something innate in me that loved making money and was always trying to figure out different ways to make money. So when Tara and I got married, I basically did I have like a year left, or I probably had a year left.
You had a year left.
And then I did another semester, and I was on a full ride football scholarship at Brigham Young University, and I wasn't playing a ton. I had some injuries. It wasn't turning out to be exactly what I had envisioned. It wasn't like it was a good experience. But a lot of times you watch these movies and the hero's journey of, yeah, I'm going to make this happen. Like I thought it was so cool. I got a football scholarship. I was going to go to BYU and be this amazing athlete and be a superstar. And it just wasn't panning out to be that way. But at this point, my priorities have kind of shifted. We had just gotten married. So I knew I wanted to start this business, and football wasn't really going the direction I had hoped for. I had a shoulder injury. And I'm like, okay, I have one semester left. I could have played another year because I could have gotten my redshirt year back and all this stuff. But I was like, I don't see this going anywhere. And as I realized that, I would go to class, and I was like, I don't really feel like I'm getting anything out of these classes. Like for me, with where I want to go with my life. And so I just came home one day and told Tara, like, I'm done. I'm going to throw in the towel. And we had talked about it before a little bit. She was pretty on board with it. And I was like, let's do this. I think we can I'd worked out all these numbers. At the time I was selling satellite dish, and I was like, we can start our own satellite dish business. I worked out these numbers. We're going to make $1 million within a year. And I convinced her to quit her job to help with that. And we just went for it. And, things didn't really work out exactly how we had planned. Within a year, we ended up, instead of making $1 million, we had $120,000 of debt. By this time, we had a 6-month-old son, and we upped and left. We left Provo, which is where we were living at the time, and went and moved in. We call it the bachelor pad, but it was with Tara's brother, my brother. Okay. These were all guys that were like installing and selling for us. There was a couple sales guys that lived there. Tara's brother's girlfriend at the time. And it actually was her house, and her brother installed her house and then ended up moving in. And then bit by bit, all of our sales guys and installers moved in.
And us.
So we didn't have any money. So we just went and moved in to the small bedroom. Our son slept in the closet. And every single day we'd wake up early and just work our guts out. I would go selling door to door. Tara would help, we'd go take care of our son, help with the admin. And then I would go door to door in like 110-degree heat and just
All right.
day in and just selling. This was not the dream we had imagined. Like it was
let me take
horrible,
a step back
but
there, and
it's
then we'll
what we
go
had to
forward.
do. So
Tara, when he approaches you and says, not only I'm quitting, but I want you to quit, what's going through your, because here's the thing, a lot of folks struggle with that, is like, do I quit my job now? Do I give myself a runway? Or maybe, hey, it's one spouse is working, so they have a little more luxury to quit and have some more room because there's one support at home from financial. Like, what the hell is going through your head of like, my job actually paid me some money. Like, what do you think?
Right? Well, it's funny because we just went to a family reunion and we took personality tests. And it's funny because Justin and I are in these small percentages of personalities where we're big dreamers, big believers, but the way we go about it is very different. And so here I am, I'd gone to school for 4 years. I was teaching, I was bringing home $1,700 a month.
Mhm.
And before we got married, I was living at home and I still couldn't really pay my bills. I was paying off loans and I didn't know anything about business. My life was always kind of like, I liked structure, I liked support.
Right.
I liked a clear path, which is the exact opposite of an entrepreneurial journey. And so when he came to me and was like, here are the numbers, Tara, let's run them. We don't know any better. We don't know all the, bumps and obstacle, things that we're going to hit. And so when he ran those numbers and I thought, we're going to make $1 million in our first year. Of course. Like, yes, let me just quit this job. We have a baby on the way. This sounds amazing. And, it was a little crazy to quit college. It was crazy just to have no savings whatsoever and just say, oh, we have a baby on the way. Yeah, let's do this. And so I was fully into it, but I've had a lot more fears. I'm not a natural born entrepreneur at all. Justin, I would say, is. And so it has been terrifying at times. It has been a massive stretch for me. When you talk about, the battery and your ability to do something, entrepreneurial work is very draining for my battery because it's so outside my comfort zone. But then in the same breath, like I've been there, I've lived there, I've survived in it, and I've actually thrived in it. And so it's taken a lot more work for me to get to where I can do well in it. But it's also something I continue to rise to and have gotten better and better at. And so it's like, I'm so glad we did it. But man, if I knew how hard it was going to be, I probably would have been like, I'm good. Let's just get this easy job and do it this way. Then at the same time, like all this growth and all the things that have happened over time are so worth it. But yeah, it has kicked my butt over and over. But I wouldn't have it any other way, really.
I think there might be a little nuance in there that I should add. I am not suggesting that people who have this mortgage and family they're taking care of and all these things to go out and immediately give it all up and just go for it and see if it's going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I had already done sales with Satellite Dish. I knew what I could sell on my own. And I also knew that by doing it, being our own retailer, we could make 2 to 3 times that amount. And we succeeded for a few months doing that. And so it wasn't like I was just like, I'm going to go and start this new startup with this new technology. And we're going to take all of our savings and our parents' savings and put everything on the line. And we don't know how we're going to survive next week. And let's go. And maybe in a year, this will work out. It was a little more to it. What happened over time was we're like, okay, we know we can do this. Now let's get a bunch of other people to do it. We got an office space. So we kind of took things to like another level. And maybe that's where, the lessons learned. It's like, we don't regret anything, but you still want to learn from your mistakes. That's probably where we got over leveraged. We hired managers to go hire and recruit guys for the summers and they didn't do anything. And so looking back, I was kind of a pushover, right? Would I have been like with the partner that I took on and those sales guys and our office manager, like I'm a totally different person. Like my personality has actually changed a lot because I just wouldn't have allowed for those things to happen that happened, right? So I just want to give that nuance there. We're not suggesting that cold turkey, anyone should just overnight go. But like your podcast is just start. There does come a point where you do just have to go for it. You do have to start, whether that's on the side or have that 6 months runway. or whatever that might
No, I
be.
mean,
So
and you're right. Well,
I didn't want to
everyone's
scare
story
everybody
is a
off
little
from the
bit
beginning.
different too, and people have to assess their situation. I heard something recently. I think it was Tim Ferriss said something along the lines of like, people trade uncertainty for a little unhappiness. And I think I'm saying that right. Like Tara, you mentioned, like, it's terrifying, but you would rather have
Yeah.
some uncertainty
Yes.
because what could happen, being that big dreamer, versus just being settled with, I'm semi happy. But like, is that and because I can relate to y'all, I'm in the same boat. Like when I was a lot younger, there was a lot of just this lot of fear to start to do anything. But I was a big dreamer, but I never took action. And when I started taking action, it was like, what can I do? You know, like there's this whole open world there. And it seems like y'all probably discovered that as well. Of like,
Yeah.
once you take that I like something y'all said, kind of researching before, is about this taking control. That's how I look at it. Like, people taking control of their life is the first step to starting. And it seems like you guys decided to take control. You didn't know where you were going. You didn't have certainty of if it would work out, but you took control of that decision and made that going forward, and kind of feeling it versus letting someone else make it for you. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that. It's funny because, growing up, as you get older, you kind of look back at yourself and go, how did I become who I am? Why did I do what I do? And you kind of see these little things where, when you were young and you're like, I'm going to try out for this sport by myself. Or, I started running when I was 14 all by myself. Nobody told me. Nobody said, hey, maybe you should do this. I was like, I'm going to do this. And then I got myself into college, paid my way through college. It's like, for some reason inside both of us, there's this thing of like, I can do this. I don't know what I'm doing. And I feel like I have way more fear than Justin does. He's a little more fearless, but like we both have this thing of like, I don't care what I have to do. I'm going to figure this out. It's always been a little harder than we think, but it's always been something that we're glad that we did and we're proud of. But there is something inside of us that just is like, why not? Why not us? Why can't we do this? And we go.
And I think, kind of to your point, like for me, I always felt wealthy, even when we had that $120,000 of debt. And I don't even, part of my brain, I think, doesn't work, but I was certain, like I did know that we could do it because I had seen other people do it. And I understood where we went wrong. And I also understood, well, if we do these things, that will be different. And I always told Tara and myself, as long as we have a roof over our head and we have food to eat, like, we're okay. Like we're literally okay. We're not on the street. We're not starving. We're okay. Sure, we got to live with a bunch of other people and it's not the most comfortable living situation, but we're fine. And I knew, okay, within a few months, a year, maybe 2 years, whatever it might be, we will have all of those things. And, as humans, we move towards pleasure and away from pain. And I agree with you. I think the pain of knowing what is possible and not going after it or achieving that would have been so great and so miserable that any amount of pain that we had to go through in the unknown, the failing forward, the school of hard knocks, was way more worth it. Totally worth it. It's like, why not go on a great adventure, even if there's going to be bumps and bruises along the way, when you know what's possible? And that's kind of our message with Millionaire University, and similar with your message is like, it doesn't, like,
Go into
everything,
it.
a lot of what, I don't want to get like too deep into like psychology, but a lot of what, yeah, I mean, Tara's a lot better at this than I am. Like, I hear it all. I'm not that articulate. I feel it. I live it. But I think we put way too much on, like, oh, we lost a little bit of money. Oh, like this was hard. It's like, well, what does that even mean? Like, what is hard? Like, we're literally sitting on our butts right now in an air conditioning building. That's an amazing, like, life isn't that hard. Like, it's all like in our heads where, the whole fight or flight, like we have this thing, we're like, oh, we're afraid of what people are going to think of us. Like, that's what's hard. But if you want to remain, it's harder staying like that. So it's like, get into it, dive into it. I mean, Tara and I, even today, we're dealing with all kinds of hard things, right? Like, our son just broke his foot, and like, we've had all kinds of like craziness. Everyone has crazy things that happen in life, but are we going to like lean into that and grow and learn, or are we going to shy away from it? I don't know. I'd much rather fail, and I don't even consider it failure. Failure is a whole other topic. I don't consider it failure, but I'd much rather fail going for my dreams than be comfortable or succeed, I guess, but that's not even possible. Just
well, I look at
living a
it
life
too,
of
like the way
mediocrity,
you
I
got,
guess
the
you
way
could
you're
say.
putting
So
that is,
anyway,
and the way I think about it is like delayed gratification, right? And you probably see this with a lot of folks that you guys work with and coach and try to help out starting businesses is they want the flash now. They want the nice car and the big house, and they want to look like they're quote unquote successful. But the reality is they haven't built a long-term foundation to get there. Not only maybe physically with material stuff, whether that even matters, but also mentally to withstand those, the shit storms that come with it,
100%. I always say, losing that $120,000 that we lost is what has made us millions and millions of dollars and allowed us to live the life that we live today. So that first business, like failing or struggling in that first business, laid the foundation for everything that has come since then. And it's even greater things than money. I mean, we've achieved all of the financial money, house, traveling goals that we ever set out on. And then once you achieve those goals, you're like, oh crap, like I still have an inner work to do because I'm not 100% at peace and zen every day. And I'm not as happy as I thought maybe I would be. And then the inner work begins, right? So I love everything that we've done. I love that we just went for it. And like, your show is
when
you
did
just gotta,
when did you guys
start.
meet for the first time?
Go for it. Oh.
Okay.
We actually went to the same university and we lived in the same complex. And
university.
I
like how you said that. Went to the same university.
So there's a guy side and there's a girl side. And what I think is so funny and very telling is at 5 a.m., I mean, you're in Utah, it's the winter, and it's freezing cold. People aren't getting up at 5 a.m. at college. A few are. So I would wake up and go on a morning run, and the only person I would see would be Justin going to football practice. That's essentially how we met, was at that complex. And I remember watching him just being like, oh, that's interesting. And I go on my run. And so it's so funny looking back and
whatever. You were like, oh, he's hot.
Actually, he's playing football. And I was like, I know those guys. Like,
she was not
he is a good looking guy. I don't know. He did.
Well, yeah, I did.
I'm trying to embarrass you a little bit now.
We're going to that.
Well,
No, it's a pretty good story. I'll try to share it quickly. At the time, I actually had, I think, a girlfriend or something like that. And every guy in our apartment complex liked Tara. So I was like, okay, I don't want to be just like chasing after her. Plus, I have a girlfriend, so. But her and I ended up breaking up. I moved out into a different complex. And then I came back one day visiting a friend and I saw her and I was like, oh, snap. Like, anyway, I won't get in detail about but she was just like sitting there on the grass. I was like, I need to ask her out. And I was talking to my friend. He's like, oh, she actually has a boyfriend. I was like, I don't care. I'm asking her out. Like, I'm going to marry this girl. So I gassed her out, and it wasn't really my personality. I might be extroverted, but it wasn't my personality. Just go up and like ask a girl out, right? So I mustered up the courage. My roommates were like cheering me on, and I call her, and I thought we had a great conversation. And she said she'd love to hang out. She had like a family reunion coming up, and then I was going to be gone, but she's like, yeah, let's hang out sometime. So I swear it was a week later, I was driving back to California with one of my best friends and who lived in the similar complex there. He's like, oh, did you hear? Tara got engaged. And I was like, my heart sunk because I was in my mind, I was going to marry this girl. Like, that's how my personality is. Like, I'm going to marry her. We haven't gone on a date yet, but I'm going to marry her. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, no, like that's not, and I still believed like it was going to happen. I don't know why. It's kind of weird, but it still broke my heart. And then came back, like they ended up breaking up, but I wanted to give her a little bit of time. So I gave her a little time. Then I ended up asking her out. We go out, best date of my life. We had great conversation. I was like, oh man, this is the one. This is happening. Yes, here we go. And I tried to like pace it. I want to like scare her off and like call her too soon. That was back, like we had the texting, but it was like you have to press like 20 buttons. Then it just wasn't like as big. But 2 days later, it was 2 days in football, and I was sitting by one of my friends, and we were both talking about girls. And he started talking about this girl. I was talking about a girl, and then we realized we were talking about the same girl. We were both dating the same girl. We were both into the same girl.
Dating is a loose term. I've gone on like 1 or 2 dates with both of them, and I didn't know them well enough to be like, I have no idea who to choose. I don't know them well enough. They both seem amazing. And so it was already a battle for me where I'm like,
it sounded like the same girl. And I was like, well, what's her name? He's like, Tara Wood. And I was like, I almost choked on my meatloaf. And anyway, I was like, have you kissed her yet? And he's like, yeah, last night. And I was just like, okay, I'm done. I'm never talking to this girl again. And then anyway, they ended up breaking up, and I was like, I'm done with her. And she ends up calling me and begged me to be her man. And
no, what happened was I had a good friend who was on the football team as well, and he was dating my roommate. And so I had been talking to him because I'm like, do you know both these guys? What are they like? And so we'd already had this discussion. So he's texting me during this lunch, and he's like, they both know. And I'm like, no. Like, the decision has been made for me. Like, I knew Justin's gone. And this other guy, I'm like, well, he seems like a great guy, but I never got to know Justin. And so dated that guy for a little while, and it didn't quite work out. But Justin was always in the back of my mind. I'm like, I wonder what he's like. We had that great date, but then I never really got to know him much more. And so when we broke up, he was the only guy I think I ever reached out and called and asked on a date, because I was just a little more shy. And so I kind of made up this fake date scenario. It wasn't fake. It was really going to happen, but everybody bailed on me. And we went on a date.
3 kids later?
And then the rest is history.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
3 kids,
How do you think
18,
about
16, and 14.
And actually, I've only had a couple couples on the podcast over the last 7 years. And one of the things I always like to ask when I'm and with couples that seem like they're happy and they're obviously everyone has their struggles and stuff, but what is the foundation y'all build in your relationship to keep the communication alive? Like, it seems like it is. Like, how is there any foundation? Like, do you meet? Hey, we're having a meeting once a week, or we do these date night. Like, is there anything you guys build in a foundation? Because I'm imagining working together, there's no boundaries, you know?
Easy. We've never struggled working together at all.
It's like marriage on steroids, because you have to work together. So if you're not getting along and you're fighting and you have a project or an interview to do, like today, we actually had a good fight yesterday, and we're like, oh crap, we have to do a podcast interview today. And we're like, you're the worst. No, you're the worst.
Yeah. We want to keep it real. Like, we argue sometimes, it's going to happen. We're going to have disagreements, but so we don't want everyone to think like, oh, we argue, they don't. Like, we absolutely do, but it's just, I don't know what's more important, right?
I mean, it's been a progression, because I came into the marriage having certain expectations. Justin came into the marriage having certain expectations. And the great thing about marriage is, first of all, you think the person's going to come in and they're going to solve all your problems. Then there comes the wake-up call where they're going to expose all your problems. They're going to push your buttons. The deeper they get into your heart, the more they're going to hit your stuff. And it's interesting to be in a relationship where you love this person so much, but sometimes you just want to wring their neck, because you're just like, if you just understood and could get this. And sometimes the communication is so hard because there's so much history and there's so much just like emotion built up in that. And so we've spent a lot of time learning about emotions and developing our own intelligence. And it's interesting because when we started, Justin's, he had the confidence in this. And I was just always like, oh my gosh, this is terrifying. What are we doing? Okay, I'm going to work so hard. I'm a good worker. I believe in the things, but I also get really scared about certain things. And so, financial stress is one of the biggest fears of my life. Something I grew up with, which is why I was so interested in making money, because I didn't want to be afraid of money. But I also put this expectation on money that would solve a lot of my problems. And so I was like, this is great. Most of my problems internally are financial based. So once we make this money, this is going to be great. And so I put a lot of pressure on Justin, and, sometimes he would take these risks and they didn't work out, and I'd get mad at him. And sometimes he's getting mad at me because I'm overworked, and then just like a robot at the end of the day. And so over time, we've had to learn and get smarter. We've had to learn how to stand in our own lane. What's Justin good at? He's killer at talking to people, networking, strategy, running numbers. He will have the bold, blunt, sometimes intense conversations. His work ethic is insane. He also is somewhat obsessive and can't stop talking about it, and wakes up in the middle of the night and thinks about it. And you're on a date and you're talking about something totally random, and he's like, did you know? Blah, 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 blah. And so every person has these strengths and these weaknesses. And so we've had to put in, at different times. At this point of the day, at 6:00, we don't talk about business anymore. because you really do have to protect your marriage, because if it becomes too much like a business, the romance is like out the window.
Yeah.
And there are things, Justin's very passionate about business. I would say that's one of his number one passions. I am not, it's not one of my number one passions, but I like to learn. I like to grow. I love to learn about people.
And you like the freedom.
I love the freedom. I love the growth. And so I continue to show up for it, but I don't wake up and think all about numbers. I'm thinking about the world and how things work. And I'm much more interested in human development. And so we've had to find our lanes. You know, I'm better with technology. I'm better with, you know, building websites, listening to his strategies and saying, that's insane. No. Okay, that's epic. Let's do this. Or he pushes me out of my comfort zone. I kind of help bring him back down a little bit. And so it's about finding your lane, getting better at it. And then as we've gotten older, it's about everything that I am uncomfortable with in my own self. Anything that I see that's wrong with him is 100% about Tara. Like, I used to try to change him, make him into something different, tell me he needs to do this. And we're still honest and we're still open, but everything that bothers me is 100% the way I see it, and it's about me. And that is something we've been doing the last little bit, where it's, okay, I am not functioning well right now, or I'm mad at you, or I'm struggling with this. And I started to take on 100% of myself. It's like, I want to be with someone. I want to love someone. And I know they're not going to be perfect. Can I not like them through that? Do I have to be mad if they do certain things? Do we have to get angry when we talk about things? And so just learning to continually evolve. But what I love about Justin is like, I know he loves and adores me. I know he knows I'm imperfect. And he knows I love and adore him. And we're just willing to, like, whatever comes our way, we lean into it. And so that has been a process, and we're always learning, but we always show up for it.
Just for the record, so are you saying yesterday's argument was your fault? I just want to make sure we get that on
there. Yesterday's argument was if I got reactive.
Yeah, but that's good. Like,
I'm teasing.
Just the fact, and I'd be curious, like, because obviously it seemed like, if I'm reading between the lines, you didn't have that awareness maybe 5 or 10 years ago. That's something that's been developing. What changed for you? Is it something you read? Is it therapy? Is it like how did you decide, like, okay, this is something new that we need to bring into our relationship to keep it fresh and new and exciting and also respectful?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, you can look back and you can kind of see it from day one. You know, they say you marry the person who's at the same level of maturity as you are.
Or development.
Or development, you know, whatever it is. And so we were pretty emotionally matched, which meant we had a lot of great things going for us, and we were also very immature in a lot of ways. And so we've worked hard on those things and tried to figure each other out and tried to find all these things. We've read different books. But a few years ago, it's like our marriage was barely hanging on by a thread.
This was after we sold our education business. We had more money than we ever needed. We lived in a great place, like reached all of our dreams, and we almost got divorced. Like, right? So that's misery right there. When you think you have everything you want and you're not happy, you're struggling in your marriage, and sort of like, hey, either we quit or we figure something out. Because clearly it's not. I think we used to think anytime we were struggling, oh, once we make the money, it'll be better. Once we have this, it'll be better. And then we're in this spot and we're still struggling. We're like, okay, what do we do now? So
the great thing about doing hard things is that when hard things present themselves, you have this inner ability of going, okay, I can do hard things. Like being 14 and learning how to run by myself, it changed my life, because things would come at me and I'm like, dude, I just ran 2 miles straight. I'm epic. And I kept thinking, you just kind of keep building on that. You take little things that you can do now and you go, okay, that's epic that I did that. What if I did this? And what if I did this? So we were good at doing things, but we weren't very good at not being reactive. We weren't very good at not blaming. We weren't very good at being honest. I mean, there were a lot of things where, you know, Justin works really hard and I was struggling with certain things, or certain things I wanted to talk to him, or I'd protect certain parts of my heart because I'm like, oh, he's busy and he's got a lot of things going on. I don't want to hurt his feelings. And we didn't know how to talk about things without just blowing up and being like, oh yeah, well you, oh yeah, well you. We just got stuck in that cycle, you know? So when everything fell apart, it was very, very, very humbling. Like the rug just got pulled out from under us. And, you know, really all we had was I know I want to be with you, and I think you want to be with me, and we love our kids, we love our family. Like, let's figure it out. And so we both really started to learn and dive into things. Luckily, we had a couple years to take off, and I had some
Right.
childhood trauma.
Not that you need that. Not
that you need that, no. But we were blessed to have that,
that.
and that's one of the great things about having a business is it allowed us the years to like sit there and get our marriage back together. And so there were some things I needed to face. I had some childhood trauma that I needed to do a lot of work on. Still doing some work on that, and I had to be more honest. Like,
I love Byron.
There's a woman, her name's Byron Katie. I absolutely love her.
Oh my God.
She has changed. Oh, isn't she the best? She's the one that set you free and goes, I love your story and all, but it's kind of dumb. But she says it way better. She's like, do you want to keep that story? Is there any reason to keep your story of your marriage and your husband? And it's like, I mean, no, I guess not. And so I think one of the biggest things is we've gotten more honest. And that is really, really scary. Because to go to your person and say, I love you, but also this is so hard about being in a relationship with you. Yeah. And can you handle that space? I mean, talk about pushing someone's buttons. I mean, we just celebrated our 20th anniversary, 20-year anniversary, June 23rd. And we didn't really do anything big. We were on a family reunion. But to me, I was like, dude, this is big. 20 years of diving into Tara to figure out how to be with Justin is epic.
We did just get off a 9-month trip around the world.
So we were pretty good.
We were like, we don't need to go anywhere. We just want to be here.
So yeah, I think coming to the realization that anything that bothers me and that I react to and I don't deal with well is 100% my responsibility. But also having the courage to say, I love you, but also this is hard and I just need to be heard most of the time. A lot of times we don't even necessarily solve the problem. It's just learning how to say it without blowing up and falling.
And when
apart.
Tara talks about reactive, I mean, Brian, sounds like you've studied some of this stuff. Like you've heard of the term like limbic brain, or like whenever our mind is in lizard brain or limbic brain, that whole like fight or flight, the whole like when you can feel it, when you're, some people feel it in their chest, some people feel it in their stomach, but just the anger, whenever you're in that zone, you're not thinking with your prefrontal cortex. You're going to say and think stupid things, and it's going to cause more problems. Mm-hmm. So being able to recognize that and be like, oh, I am literally like, I'm in like this thing that's supposed to protect me if I'm getting attacked by a saber-toothed tiger. Like this is not a good time to have like a healthy discussion with the person that I love and care about. Right. So you need to like bring that down, recognize what part of your brain you're using. And if the other person's in limbic brain and you can speak calmly and not be reactive, almost always guaranteed they will come back down. So those are like a few little things. Having that been said, we still get in limbic brain. We still go there. But something I would say that has been huge is what I call the love tank or the love bank. If you're in a relationship with someone and you're not like, because life is hard. Let's be honest. If you're working as hard as you can, which I think most people are, whether it's in their brain or at work or everything, whatever they're doing, or with home or with the kids, and you're interacting with someone who hasn't given you a lot of positivity and acknowledged like, oh, thank you so much. Like, I see you. I see what you're doing. I appreciate this. Thank you for that.
Right.
Hey, nice pants, nice tush, whatever. Right? Like giving you these compliments, right? Like, and then like they're just like beating you up and telling you you suck. Like that's not going to go. Like I don't care who you are. Like you're going to dig in. You're like, oh yeah, screw you. You know what I mean? So the love bank, you got to constantly be making deposits for each other into the love bank or the love tank. And what we found is when we're not showing appreciation to each other and giving compliments and being flirty and going on dates and all that, but we're just like at each other for different things that aren't going well, the marriage starts to go down. The relationships goes down. You're like, this isn't fun. This sucks. But when you're doing those things, and then you have one little thing to say, like we used to go do these, like you said, you have weekly discussions. Yeah, we used to have these things where like, okay, once a week, we're going to go on a walk and we're going to talk about all the things we appreciate about each other. And we found that when we did that, we'd literally prepare for it. We'd make a list and you're like, oh my gosh, it changes your heart, first of all, as you're preparing for that. And then as you're saying it, it changes you. And the other person changes because they hear, oh, they do see me, they do recognize me, they do love me. And then you can give like a little bit of feedback on where the improvement can be made. What's crazy is like it almost goes away. It's like, oh, that improvement's not even real. It doesn't really need to be. I love you for who you are. I'm good with who you are because I feel seen and cared about and heard. But sometimes you do have something you might want to share, right? But it's a lot better received at that point because you're like, oh, you just want me to like, you know, put my dishes in the sink or whatever, but you do love me. You see me, you recognize
Yeah.
everything I'm doing. It's just this one little thing. And then it can stay that one little
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
And
Well, and you guys
we
even
found that
mentioned,
to
I think
be
one of the big keys is
extremely
that
helpful.
if you know what your triggers are, like Terry, you mentioned about going back to childhood, if you know what the triggers are, because I was in the same boat, is now when, Justin, let's say you go approach her and you're like, hey, these are some things, you know, like I'm seeing or whatever. She recognized that she gets triggered by those. So it's not a reactive, I'm going to jump at you. It's okay. I recognize I'm triggered. Let me take a step back. Why am I feeling this way? Oh, it's because I get triggered. I've already done this work. I know how to listen and kind of be in the moment and seek to understand versus seeking to kind of, you know, make my point. So I think that's part of it, right? If you both doing, if only one's doing the work, it's never going to work. If you're both doing the work and you talk about that work together, I think that's where you grow together. I'm assuming you guys, you may agree with this, maybe not. I mean, I think that's why it's about a team. Like it's a team effort. And some days, you know, you're going to hit the game-winning shot, and sometimes you're just going to be there to throw the assist, and sometimes you're going to be on an off day, and it's how do you pick each other up as a team?
I think it's definitely a team, but something I'll throw
Mhm.
out there, and this is something we learned from, you know, taking lots of marriage courses, and it actually what we learned, and I don't think it's true in 100% cases, but I think mostly, I think you have to go into it as if it is a team, as if it is, because if you think of it as a team, a lot of times when it happens, it's like, oh, they're not doing their
Mhm.
share. You know what I mean? And we don't see where we're off. But if you can maintain that non-limbic brain status, if you will, and you can just continue to listen and hear and understand and not be reactive, if you can do that, the longer you do that, and even if it might be months or whatever, usually from what we found and
Mm.
heard and
Okay.
understand, the other person will rise up to that development, right? Um, so I agree, it is a team, but if you're
Right.
constantly like, "Oh, you're not doing your part of the team," then you stay in that spot. So I think it's important to know that you are you can do it, like you are capable of doing it on your own. And the thing is, if you ever do think it's the other person's fault, you're probably not in the best limbic space. You might think you are, but the brain space you may not be there if you're like, okay, well, I'm going to wait till they turn around because it's their fault. I don't know. Anyway, those are just some thoughts I have. Like I said, we're still working on it, but
Mhm.
what do you think?
I think too, there's some simple things. Like one of the things
Mm.
that we did that was huge was put our kids to bed at a good time.
Yeah.
Like there are so many people that have young children that they put to bed so late and they sleep in their beds. And I'm like, so you just have a buddy that you're hanging out with? Like, is there any kind of romance in your life? So we have always put our kids to bed. Now they're teenagers, so we still protect that time. But it's like, okay, good night, we're going to bed. And we've always gone to bed together and we protect that time. We go on dates and we support each other's interests. We like to see the other person
Yeah.
happy, but man, just putting your kids to bed at a good time, that's huge. And a lot of times I'll talk to people and I'm like, so your kids are going to bed at 10:30 and you're mad about your marriage. Like, when would you ever be working on it? You're working in the daytime, kids go to bed, and you have not protected your marriage at all. You have given yourself zero window of, hey, it's you, it's me. Like, we like each other. And so that's a big deal, I think.
And I'm of the opinion that you can work really hard. Like you can work from 6 to 6, like literally a 12-hour day, and then you can still have plenty of
Right.
time to spend together. And I'm not suggesting people work 12 hours a day. I'm just saying like kind of no excuses, right? Like but yeah, I think protecting that marriage and realizing, you know, the whole like, why are you doing what you're doing? If you're just out making money and working really hard, but you're not putting each other first, and I say it all the time, like we've made money. I would much rather live in a shack with Tara in the middle of nowhere, have a good relationship, and be happy than have, you know, we currently live in like, I don't know, this huge
Right.
house right across the street from the ocean, and it's great. Tell you what, you can still fight in that. You know, um, I like all these things that we have, but if I had to choose, there's no question. So when you're doing the hustle and working with the kids and trying to do all the things that come about in life, like none of that matters if your relationship, like that's the priority, right? If that's broken, like
yeah, I love that. I think, I mean,
nothing else
y'all
really
hit
matters.
a couple big kind of nails on the head here. And that comes back to, again, that support. The rising tide lifts all boats, right? If you're working together, if you're understanding where your faults are, not just the other person's, I think that's where the focus. And by the way, for the kids, I guess I'll ask this, and I had some notes here to kind of talk about parenting for a second. Maybe there's a couple things we can chat about. How do you guys? So you mentioned the kids being to put to bed. How do you think about parenting? So if I'm right, all the kids, they've only known y'all work for yourselves in your own businesses, right? So how does that conversation go? Like, do they know what you guys do? Is it just kind of out of sight, out of mind, mom and daddy work? Like how much do you involve them in day in, day out?
Quite the opposite.
The opposite. Justin is very verbal, and he'll tell you all the things on his mind and heart. And he's very passionate about having his kids learn and grow. And if they desire, they can really do whatever they want. But if they want to be entrepreneurs, they can. And so we're in the state where our kids are teenagers, and they're great kids. They're awesome kids, but they're used to us. And they think that our lifestyle is normal. And they think the ideas and the way that we function, the way that we live is pretty
Even though
normal.
we talk to them about it all the time, thousands of discussions. I would like to say all of our kids have thriving businesses like I thought they would when they were teenagers. They don't, but
no. So they're great kids, but kids, when they want to learn, it's on their timeline. And so we know they love us, and we have great relationships with them, but they have not yet come to the point where they need money desperately. We provide very well for them. And so
we don't intentionally spoil them.
No.
It's just not like our situation growing up where we literally, you want
shampoo?
And
go get them.
Go sell candy bars at Stater Brothers so you can earn it, right? Yep. Like pretend like you're doing not pretend, but that's what people assume you're doing the fundraiser. And anyway.
Yeah. So we talk a lot to them. We do a lot of life coaching. We learn a lot, and we're always talking to them. We both have really desired open relationships with our kids. And so we are always learning, talking, giving ideas. And sometimes they love it, and sometimes they think we're annoying. But I know as they grow and go out on their own, they are going to be so grateful. And then as they come back and say, hey, mom and dad, okay, now that I'm out in the real world, I realize you guys are pretty awesome, pretty epic. What were you saying about that business? And what were you? And so I'm sure we'll have some of those moments, but yeah, they're still teenagers learning and growing and staying busy. But we talk about all kinds of things.
They all want to have their own business and stuff.
Mm-hmm. They just don't want to have to work.
We're in the thick of it. We have an 18-year-old who just got married. It was kind of unexpected last minute that's a whole nother. This happened within the last few months. Like
he just broke his tibia and fibula.
A lot of people don't even know, so they'll probably be hearing this. But it's like, hey, that is so. Yeah. So we have him and his wife, both 18-year-olds old, living with us, and we're and she's awesome. We love her, but she's young, right? So we're essentially like parenting two married 18-year-olds. Who neither one of them want to go to college because they've heard us talk about like it's a waste of time.
We burnt that bridge, I think.
But now I'm like, maybe college would be nice because you have someone else like doing the hard work for you, right? Like they got to go to school, they got to the schedule. So with him and them, we're basically like, hey, 40 hours a week, because they're just not used to like even the work ethic. Mm-hmm. You can either be going to school, you can be studying, you can be working on your business. 40 hours a week, and every day they have to send me their schedule of what they did, because on their own they won't do it. They might put in a few hours, but it's like they have everything they need. So we recognize like the only way they're going to learn is by living on their own, which they're not ready to live on their own because they just don't have the money. And
well, if you can go back
anyway, there's another detail.
Well, just if I could throw that in there, because I think that's a good point.
Go ahead.
Looking back, not that we have the crystal ball, but I have a 12-year-old, let's say. So let's say you're talking to Brian, his 12-year-old, or someone that has an 8-year-old, someone that's a little younger. If you could go back and pull the lever and maybe do something a little different so that when they got to 18, there might be a different mindset. Would you do anything? Like, would you have changed anything?
I don't think there's anything we could have changed or done differently. Would you agree? I mean, always there's little things, but
kids are amazing, but they need constant guidance and supervision and support. And as they become teenagers, when they're little, you're changing diapers, but as they become older, you're having a lot of conversations. There's a lot of, everybody should go to therapy school. Everybody should learn psychology before they ever have a teenager, because they just need a lot of guidance and support. And going back, it's like, if I wasn't working and I was a stay-at-home mom and I wanted to teach them better, financial and work ethic, I would probably put them on a program that would take full-time my time. And so it just kind of depends, do you want to put your time into having a business and teaching them and growing and them watching you and sharing the things as you go, because that takes a lot of time? Or do you want to put your full-time effort into working with them? Or do you want to find someone who can teach them those different things? And so it really is, what is on your plate? What's your capacity? What's the capacity of your children? We have our kids who are just, they're making lists, they're going out, they're getting after it. And others are struggling to make it through school. It really depends on where they're at. And kids grow and evolve as they become older. Things are exposed in their life where you're like, okay, this is a big blind spot for you. How do we work with you on this? And so it's a constant, what do I have time for? What's important in our family? And what do I do and support? And how do I keep them accountable? That's the hardest part, is that accountability. You can have 5 million, great conversations, but something actually happening, it's a different ballgame.
Yeah, I think it's teaching them what you know best, but also letting them be them. But at the same time, I think life will teach you naturally, right? Like, we move towards pleasure and away from pain. Like, if our son was out on his own, he would figure it out. But we're like, hey, let's give you a year, so that you don't have to just fall flat on your face and go through all the struggles. Like, you'll have plenty of struggles anyway, but let's.
No, I like that. I think,
earn a little bit of
and that's
money
also too teaching him, like, listen, we're helping you here. You have a little nest egg to help out. And it almost, I think, gives a little bit of hopefully gratitude. Like, okay, I have this opportunity. What am I going to do with it? Because a lot of people maybe not have that opportunity as well. So that could be something, almost like a life lesson there in itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just to be clear, our kids are awesome. We have great relationships with our kids. Maybe me and the youngest one, but Head's a little more. She's got a great relationship with them. But our kids will never, ever say that they didn't spend a ton of time with their parents, right? Like, that's not the thing.
We didn't have a ton of great conversations,
Tons.
Lots of great adventures. I mean, I adore my children. I have loved being a mother. It has been hard, especially running a business and having kids. But like, they know we love them. We know we're there for them. Our kids sometimes bring us things that are like, you don't want to tell your parents certain things, and they bring them to us and we lean into them.
Yeah.
And we don't ever know what they're going to bring to us. And we never know, they never know what we're going to do, to them, because we'll be like, let's move, let's travel, let's do this. Because we're big dreamers and we go, so we scare them too. And it's the ability to lean into things, because things are always new that are being brought to you. They're always growing and developing. They're things you never even thought would be coming your way. And it's this ability, like you were talking about at the beginning, something's come my way. I'm going to lean into it and I'm going to figure it out as I go, because most of the time you don't know what you're doing, but you believe at some point you'll figure it out. And I think kids sense that and they appreciate that, even though they may not appreciate it now. It's probably annoying. And some things you do are, they're just like, what the heck? But I feel like over time, as they mature, they'll be grateful, and they already are really grateful. But
I think we're just trying to keep it real, because I think a lot of people have the vision and the idea that we had. That's like, okay, I'm going to work hard, make a lot of money, I'm going to spend time with my kids, we're going to go on cool trips and do cool things. And then they're just going to like love and appreciate me, and they're going to learn how to be entrepreneurs and do all this stuff. And maybe not,
sometimes yes, sometimes no.
But just, I know it's all there. I know those open discussions are there. And I think a lot of times it's kind of like what Tara said too. When I'm like frustrated at my kids and like, what's wrong? It's usually me. Like, I need to like check myself. Don't get me wrong. You got to have a little bit of both. You got to like, they still got to do their chores, right? They still got to like do stuff. But if you can just keep a chill temperament, then that's more powerful. Like having that love and connection, keep it chill, but also follow through, and they got to do the stuff they got to do, because you are a parent. You're friends, but first of all, you're a parent and you're a leader.
Absolutely.
Well,
I appreciate the vulnerability, because we went down the relationship rabbit hole and some parenting. So this is certainly awesome. All right, let's end the conversation on this, and I'm gonna look for an answer from each of y'all. So, what I always like, and you could take it from a relationship or you can take it from a business standpoint, but I always like to encourage an action to get started. So you could give advice if you want. I'll allow it. It's your podcast interview. But I always like to encourage like a question you may have folks ask themselves. Maybe it's a challenge to give them to get started and take that action today. But whoever wants to start, what would y'all share with the audience kind of as a lasting impression, something to get them started and move out of the gate? Just move off of 0 to 1 to move in the right direction of the life they want to live.
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so last week I like to run, as we were talking about, and I was on this little run, and there was just this random sign in a field, and it's a little more dramatic than I, necessarily agree with, but it's somewhat accurate. But it basically said, being married is hard, but being alone is twice as hard. And it really comes back to this. Yes, doing things is hard, but not doing them is harder. Going to the gym is hard, but not going to the gym is way harder over time. So it's really, what are you going to sign up for? What are you willing to do? What hard do you want to take on? And what are the end results? What are the goals? What are the benefits that you want? And so, yes, whatever you do that you want is going to be outside of your comfort zone. And it's going to be a push. And it's going to be challenging. But so is not going outside of your comfort zone. And so, what's your decision? What hard do you want? And what are the results? It's going to be hard either way. Just move into
good,
it.
Tara. All right, John, how are you going to follow that up?
What about you?
Let's see. So a few years ago, I was watching the Steve Jobs video that he gave at Harvard, the commencement speech about connecting the dots. And the crazy thing, I was actually preparing for like a talk that I was giving at church. And part of it, so I was like, I'm going to like make a parable to this and share 3 stories from my life. And one was when I played football, and I shared about how when I was at, I said Harvard, I meant Stanford. When I went and was playing at Stanford and was on the kickoff team and ran down, and the guy runs it back for a touchdown, and I ended up getting blamed. I don't think it was my fault, but I ended up getting blamed for that, pulled from the game, and it kind of affected like my career from then on out. We ended up losing that game. That was the first of like 3 losing seasons we had. So I'm personally responsible for BYU having like going down a losing trajectory. I'm teasing about that part, but it was like broke my heart. This dream that I had, this thing I'd worked so hard for my entire life. The crazy thing is, like in this talk I gave, I was sharing how like looking back, like that led to me like dropping out essentially. And then things got really hard, and like it led to maybe Tara and I getting married, and it led to like all these beautiful things that had happened. But it was like the hardest part of my life at that time. But there were so many things, like even in the business, we lost money, all these different things. None of that would have happened if we didn't start. Like nothing that we have today, like you can't connect the whole point of the speech he gave is you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back, but you've got to start, going back to the name of your podcast, like you've got to start, you've got to take action. Nothing is certain. You're not going to, you will not end up like, even in our business right now, like we're currently to the spot in Millionaire University where for every dollar that we spend on advertising, we get that money back like right away. I didn't know that this was going to happen in the way that it's happened, but we're kind of, anyway, that's kind of a little nuanced thing. Like in business and life, like you have to go for it. You got to think less, do more. And the craziest thing about that, that speech, I didn't realize that he was giving it at Stanford. Like this was like after like I prepared this whole talk, and I'm like, wait a minute, he's at Stanford. I was at Stanford. He was literally, when he was giving the speech, like speaking to my soul, like talking at the exact same spot where I lined up like 20 years ago, ready to fly down on kickoff, not knowing that my life would be, forever changed in what I thought was a negative way, but ended up being like the best blessing ever. Right. So you just got to go for it. And when things get hard, like just keep going. It's all up here. Like, do you have food? Do you have shelter? Yeah. You're wealthy because you have all the opportunity in the world. And so just keep going. It's all about loving the people who you're with, having those great relationships, having the basics of life to keep you alive. And other than that, it's just a fun game that we get to play. And it's a beautiful thing. And just think less, do more, take action. Don't make dumb risks. Don't go spend like all your life savings. You don't have to. You can make a ton of money in business without risking it all. There's so many things you can do. But the main reason people don't take action is because they're afraid of what people are going to think. They're afraid of like these different things, but you just got to put it out there. You just got to go for it.
I love it.
Then,
well, what's interesting, I love how these conversations
sorry,
sometimes circle back around. We talked about, both y'all, your belief of like controlling your destiny. And both of your answers were kind of around that, right? Choose your hard. That's you're going to go left or right. If you choose to go left and you choose your hard, then that's just as important. And Justin, to your point, it's like, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the path ahead is, whether it's the right choice or not. But if that's what you really want, if that's the chance to go forward for you, even if it's uncertain, you have to take that first step and go. So yeah, I love that it kind of wrapped around nicely. This was unbelievable. I appreciate all being on. Where can folks say hello online? Where do you guys spend time in the social sphere?
I would say just millionaireuniversity.com. If you want, you can go to millionaireuniversity.com/training. Okay. We have like a little free business course that we put together. It has like 300 business ideas and like the 7 steps as we see it to starting and scaling a business. We've grown several multi-7-figure, multi-million-dollar businesses. So yeah, we just kind of share some of the things we wish we would have known.
Yep. The Millionaire University podcast comes out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We're all on all the social media. But yeah, we're out there just going, okay, what did we need when we get started? How do we save people from some of the craziness that we did? And there's so many smart, brilliant people out there just sharing opportunity and motivation for free. It's crazy. So we love that.
We're not on social media,
but we have social again, media. I appreciate all being on because your story and even sharing like the vulnerability about the relationship and the struggles, I think that's definitely helpful because I know many people, it's probably the majority that are in those similar positions. So it gives them a little hope that, they can work it out and, they can live their best life. So thank you all again for joining. This has been great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
It's been awesome.